Now it's time to start discussing the ranged weapons. These ones can strike enemies further away. The first of these is the whip, obtained after defeating Eleni's spiky tiger. The whip is one of the strangest weapons to deal with, having quite the wonky hitbox. Sadly, the charges for this one are largely pointless. The thing about the whip is it tries its best to be a combination of melee and ranged. And unfortunately, due to the wonky hitbox, it doesn't do that spectacular a job of either. For example, in this charge we can see just how limited the hitbox really is with that first lash not even hitting. It can be good for attacking through walls, but the thing is most of the charges don't add too terribly much to the mix. Charge 5 is the exception to the rule. Since he attacks in all four major directions, it does have decent crowd control possibilities. But most of them, he just does things like a little twist or jump to make it look more powerful, and while it does add attack power, it doesn't really help all that much. For example, here we can see some of the shortcomings of the whip. Yeah, impressive, you whipped 4 times, but in one direction. Even the level 8 charge. It looks impressive, but since all the attacks are almost on the exact same horizontal level, it doesn't really add too much. Next up is the bow. This weapon is given to you by the Dwarf Elder after the sprite joins your party. The charges for this one are pretty boring, but they get the job done. The thing about the bow charges is, for the most part, they all look pretty much identical. No matter which charge you unleash, your character's actions will look exactly the same. Just a bit of a range and power increase. Now at level 3 you do get an appreciable upgrade. Now you're able to fire 2 arrows with 1 shot. This helps a little bit with crowd control, but it goes back to all looking the same for a little bit. I mean, come on, no flourish of the bow? Nothing? You'd think they could have at least done something to make it look different. At level 6 you get 1 more major upgrade. Now you can fire 3 arrows with the shot, meaning with a well-placed charge, you can actually take out entire crowds of enemies. So at least that counts for something. The fact that it's ranged also helps it out a bit. It lets you take out the enemies from afar, and that can be a nice thing sometimes. They'll never see it coming. Now it's time for the Boomerang. The sprite comes equipped with this once he joins. The charges on this one are kinda interesting, as they start to blur the line between melee and ranged. The Boomerang is one of the most useful ranged weapons due to one simple fact, and that is the fact that the Boomerang actually pierces, so even if you only throw 1, you're likely to hit a lot of enemies. Still, that doesn't stop them from upgrading it. Much like the bow, once you hit level 3, you start throwing 2 boomerangs. Also of note, sometimes you'll do little spinning slashes with the boomerangs before throwing them, and that counts as a melee strike. Thus, the boomerang is all kinds of versatile. At level 6, once again, it upgrades, and you throw 3 boomerangs. It's not as vital as the upgrades to the bow. However, it does still have its uses, making a longer string of attacks for the enemy to wander right into. And hey, let's just face it, this is a way for you to attack and look darn good doing it. Just make sure you don't have any dogs trying to catch these frisbees. Finally, there's the Javelin class. This one's obtained once you gain Undyne's magic. This one is a bit strange due to the arcing aim, thus this weapon can hit enemies in rather unique ways if you aim it right. The Javelin is a rather tricky class, combining some of the best points of the Boomerang with one of the worst points about the bow. That is to say, it doesn't pierce. But with some of the charge attacks, you'll actually get melee strikes as he spins the Javelin over his head. Also, like other thrown weapons, you do get upgrades at charge 3 and charge 6. For instance, here he throws 2 Javelins. The aiming can be a bit tricky to get used to, as he throws the Javelin upwards and it goes in an arc. This can lead to some interesting trick shots. And there's one of those melee strikes I was talking about. And here at charge 6, you get to throw 3 Javelins at a time. Yeah, that's what you get for trying to whack me. The range on this one is rather nice. I'm actually not sure how well it compares to the bow's range, but it's certainly more interesting to use, I'll give it that. And thus, that's all for the weapon charges. Used well, they can land good, strong hits that can make the difference in some fights. And with that, we've finished the demos for Secret of Mana. It was quite nice going through this game again. Secret of Mana probably ranks as my favorite RPG. It's certainly not without its flaws, but overall the game is a very satisfying experience. The more active fighting style, it just makes me feel more a part of the game. Hence my preference for this style of RPG. There are at least a couple of other entries in the series that I may consider LPing eventually. We'll have to see how it goes. For now though, that's the end for this series. My thanks to everyone who followed me through this one. I hope you all enjoyed the series. So as far as upcoming things, I still have the extra material to finish for Battle Network 2. So I'm going to be focusing on that as far as video work goes, and after those are finished, it'll be onward to the next major project. Thus, as ever, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you again next time. Until then, fare thee well.